Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Anonymous Hedgehog podcast. My name is Rich.
And I'm Maya.
And we'll be your host for today. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about internet subcultures. And I just find it really interesting that depending on which social media website that you go to, there are different types of people that lurk in those corners. And it's just really distinct too. Like, for example, with Reddit, there's a very specific stereotype of the average Redditor versus like something like Pinterest or VSCO. Like the VSCO girl is a literal stereotype of what a type of girl is. And it's just based off of this platform, VSCO.
I think this is like, again, brings up like interesting question. Like, again, the chicken or the egg question. It's like, does the social media platform shape your personality, or like, do people who have certain personalities, are they just drawn to certain social media platforms? Because I find that like there are social media platforms that I just can't get into. Like, for example, like VSCO. I don't know. That's just something that I've never gotten into. It's very popular when we were both in like middle school. But I don't know. The app was just never appealing to me. I never really got into it. It was kind of like pointless and annoying. But I know some people who like use it like very religiously and like, you know, they like love it a lot. So like, yeah, do you think like it's because like their personalities are kind of drawn to that platform, or is it like the platform has kind of like shaped who they are?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I think it's honestly like the snowball effect of like whichever one did come first caused the other one. So like let's just say the initial group of Redditors happened to conform to one stereotype, and then everyone who visited Reddit was faced with that stereotype, and then only the people that matched that stereotype would want to stay because they related most. And so it was like this echo chamber of one personality that existed in the platform initially, which then drew in other people of the same personality in the future.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But I feel like I don't think the stereotypes are necessarily like that accurate, because I remember when I first went on Reddit, I was very surprised by like how much I enjoyed it, because I wasn't the type of person, or like, I don't know, I don't think I'm a stereotypical like Redditor, but I was very surprised at how enjoyable it was, and like how I would read like different like, you know, subreddits and stuff like that, and I was like, I really liked it, and I liked like reading people's posts on there. So like, how accurate do you think these stereotypes are?
Yeah, you're right, actually. In fact, like in the subreddits where people post pictures of themselves and things like that, it's very diverse. Like there's men, there's women, and then there's different races of people. There's different types of people, just judging them by their face. Like it doesn't fall into that stereotype, which, let me just clarify, like the stereotype of a Reddit user, I think, is like an internet, like nerdy geek male who doesn't really have a social life and spends most of his time like moderating some sort of subreddit or complaining online, usually about women. Like that's the stereotype of like the Reddit user. And actually where I got that stereotype from is from Redditors. Like it seems as though like Redditors themselves have created this image of what the average Redditor looks like, even though they don't conform to that stereotype.
That's so true, that I think that a lot of people like, I guess like, where did the stereotype come from? Because I would say most people on Reddit are not like that. But like most people on Reddit, they believe that like everyone else, they know that other people have a stereotype of like the average Redditor, and they say like, oh, like there are kind of like subreddits talking about how like people's perception of Reddit is wrong because like the average Redditor is actually not like that, but they are very aware. So like I guess where did the stereotype even come from? Because I would say that like the vast majority of people are not like that.
Yeah, that's, you know what? I think that's true. And it's just odd that like Redditors themselves would continue to perpetuate this stereotype that just makes them look bad. I remember reading a Reddit post once, and it was like, if there's so many users on Reddit, how come I've never talked to someone in real life about Reddit? And that was the question. It was like the subreddit was, I think, no stupid question, something like that.
Yeah.
And the answers to that was people don't like to admit that they're going on Reddit because the stereotype of the Reddit user is like a loser. But everyone goes on Reddit because it's just a fun platform. And that got me thinking, like, if everyone's going on it and the stereotype is that it's of a loser, then this whole thing is just built off a misconception and we should just remove it entirely.
I think it's kind of like the a loud majority kind of thing. I mean, a loud minority. It's like, I feel like the people who will talk about Reddit in real life are people who like passionately use it. I think most people like don't passionately use it. They kind of they just use it like for fun. They go on it like, you know, every few days just to look at subreddits. But I think the people that like use it kind of religiously, those are the people that you will see talk about in real life. And that's like kind of like the loud minority, which like if you hear about Reddit from like someone else, like that's the person that you're going to hear about.
Oh, you're right. And the reason for that is because like it's so socially accepted to talk about Instagram and stuff that the loud minority that is talking about Reddit is someone who doesn't fit into something like Instagram. So they'll tend to be like the loser stereotype that we mentioned earlier, just because they're not talking about these other apps that like most people are known to use. Like if I talk about Instagram, like, oh, look at XYZ's latest Instagram post. It's like, oh, that's a normal conversation. That's cool. But if I talk about Reddit, then chances are that I will be fitting into that stereotype anyway, just by talking about it, because that in itself would make me a loser.
So why do you think it's like socially acceptable to talk about Instagram, but like it's not socially acceptable to talk about Reddit then?
I think it really has to do with like the user base, in the sense that on Instagram, all of the posts that you see are of people that you know and that you follow.
That's true.
Whereas with Reddit, I don't know any of the people making those posts. For all I know, they could be a serial killer that lives like one house away from me, but that is a serial killer. And it's just, there's less relatable content if you don't actually know the people making the posts.
That's true. I feel like the first time I used Reddit, like it was kind of like thrilling, or it was kind of like weird just not knowing like who it is that you are like discussing with, you know what I mean? Like I was so used to the social media platforms where like you know exactly who you're following, you know exactly who's in your Facebook friend group or whatever. But then like when I used Reddit, I just found it was so like thrilling. Like I was like, wow, like people don't actually know like at all who I am, you know, like my name has nothing to do with my like real name, right? There's no way I could really find out who this person is. And just like, I don't know, it was like so crazy. Like the whole anonymity.
Yeah, that's true. And especially since we were younger, we've been told not to interact with strangers online.
Yeah.
But that is like the sole purpose of Reddit. It's to talk to strangers on discussion boards and things like that, which makes me kind of question, like, is it actually dangerous to talk to strangers online?
I don't know. I've been like quite puzzled by this too, because I think that it is like, it can be dangerous, but like at the same time, I think that people understand that that's not what Reddit is used for, because you would never like, for example, like you would never talk to someone on Reddit and then say like, let's meet up in person. Like that's just not a thing. But on Instagram, like catfishing and stuff happens a lot, you know? So like, I think that people understand like they don't go on Reddit to pursue like in-person friendships. Like they kind of use it as like a you know, a discussion forum. And I think like that's good. Like it's like there's no point to being like, you know, a creep on there, because you don't really get anything out of it.
That's true. Yeah, it's a discussion board that exists only in the virtual world. Yeah. Whereas other apps are sort of a hybrid between virtual world and like in-person reality. Which also brings up an interesting question of like, how do you feel about internet friends that you don't see in real life, that you've never met, that live halfway across the world from you, but you met on like Instagram or something like that?
Okay, so I have never had like, I guess a real like long-term internet friend. I don't know. I feel like I make internet friends like sometimes, but like I'm always like very like wary of them. So like I never really like pursue it. I don't know. Like something about internet friends makes me feel kind of uneasy. So I never, those friendships, like I almost will never translate them into like real world. And I'm always super puzzled how like people, I remember like, I think PewDiePie met like his wife like online or something.
Really?
Yeah, I remember like he made this video about like him like meeting her for the first time because like they lived in like different countries and yet they like flew to like meet each other because they had been dating like online or something. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, how do you do that? Like, that's so crazy to me. What do you think?
I think it's also really weird because I've just noticed that people tend to text very differently from the way they are in real life.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think the same applies to video calls. Like, I think if you're on a video call with someone, they're basically the same person. But over text, there's also just a cultural difference. Like, when I text my cousins who aren't from America, like just within one or two messages, I can tell that they're not from America just based on their texting mannerisms. Like, they'll use the ... between words, and then they'll like have random acronyms that no one in America really uses. They'll use the emojis that like aren't common here but are super common elsewhere. And it's like, that just creates discomfort already because it's like, why are you talking like that? And then besides for that, just the fact that we can't see them creates a discomfort. So I think it's just an uncomfortable experience.
I think this is an interesting question that I like asked, or like I think I was in a discussion where this was asked once, and it was like, do you think that social media has made us like closer, or do you think social media has like kind of made us like further apart from each other?
That's interesting because it's connected us globally.
Yeah,
right?
but like I think on a personal level, it has like put us further apart.
Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah.
Like, at a micro level, we've all spaced out, but at a
Yeah.
macro level, when you zoom out, we've all become close and interconnected.
It's like really, it's really crazy.
Yeah, I think that is what happened. But also, like, I think it's also too much to say that social media has spaced us apart at a micro level because, like, yeah, we're spending a lot of time on our phones. But even when I go out with my friends, like to dinner or something, we all put our phones in our pockets and we don't take them out because it's still considered rude to like be using social media during an in-person interaction.
Okay, let me ask you this. Like at your like, for example, when you're eating dinner with your family, do you guys look at your phones?
Well, my family has a rule for if you're alone on the dinner table, then yeah, do whatever you can bring your whole TV
Really?
monitor onto the dinner table. But the moment someone else comes onto the dinner table, you have to put your phone away because you need to talk to them. And I think that's a good rule because it means that your social media can't get in the way of your in-person interactions, but it also means you can continue to have social media interactions as long as there aren't in-person interactions happening.
Really?
Yeah, how do you do it?
Yeah, my family like we don't have that rule at all. Like we at the dinner table, like I would say 90% of the time we are all on our phones, and like
Really?
we all have like headphones plugged in.
Really?
Yeah, like we just don't interact with each other, and when we interact with each other, it's that kind of awkward where like you can't really hear them, so like or like you take out your headphone, you're like what, and then they have to repeat themselves. Like it's that like awkward interaction, and we just eat like silently, but we're all absorbed in our like own like thing.
I see.
That's that's so funny. Like that. I mean, I think it's good that I don't know. I find it so funny that other like households have like these rules, and like me and my family, we literally just sit at the dinner table and like look at our phones,
Yeah.
and we don't really think twice.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, just the fact, like, I've also just noticed that people take things like dinner very, very differently on like the scale of seriousness, depending on what household they're in. So like with my family, it's like when it's dinner time, like we all text in the group chat, come downstairs
Really?
for dinner. And then everyone comes downstairs and then no one has their phones out, and then we all eat and we try to talk. Like, even though, like, in fact, majority of the time we're all silent because there's nothing to talk about. And like, it's not like we're some super interconnected family that like loves each other at all times. Like half the time it's like we're all just silent, or it's like small talk about the food, but we're still not on our phones. But I know a lot of people, like when dinner's ready or whatever, they'll bring it upstairs and eat it in their room alone, or they'll make their own dinner. And there's no really sense of dinner time. It's really just eat your meal whenever you're hungry.
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely like you guys seem to take it like very like serious. It's like an event in your household, kind of. Like for us, like, I mean, we do, since like quarantine, we have been eating like together, but I would say like it's still relatively like very relaxed. Like I know before quarantine, when we were all kind of like running around and had our things to do, like we would like each make our own individual dinners. Like I know it sounds weird, but like like because like I don't know, I feel like we all have like different like dietary restrictions or whatever. So like it's just easier. Like I make food for myself, and then my parents would just make food for themselves, and like we would just like sometimes we eat it together, but other times we would just like not eat it together. But I never like take food like up to my room and eat it. But I don't know, like eating dinner, it's kind of just like a casual like it's like you need to. It's kind of just like like. You need to like eat it for fuel, but it's not really like an event. Like you need to eat it because like your body needs it, but it's not like it's not like a formal thing in our household.
I see. So what are the things in your household that sort of bring everyone together? Because in my family, it's there's really only one thing. It's not breakfast. It's not lunch. It's dinner, and that's it. And then the rest of the time, everyone's sort of in their own rooms or in their own corner of the house. Sometimes people will come down to like watch a TV show or something, but the one thing that's like every day we try to like talk to each other is during dinner. So what is that one thing for you guys, or does it even exist?
I feel like it doesn't exist. Like I feel like we don't actually have something like that. It's not that I would say I'm fairly close with my parents, but like we just don't we don't have like a set time to interact. There will be times where we're all kind of like we just happen to be in the same room, and then we'll just talk, and like it's normal. But we don't have like a set kind of thing where like, oh, we have to do this every day to interact with each other. We kind of just like it comes like when we need it to interact, like when we need it to happen. But like other times, like we're all kind of busy, if that makes sense. Like I have the things that I do during the day, and then my mom obviously goes to work, and then she works like online now, and then my dad goes to like does work online. So like. I don't know, we're all kind of like always busy, and we're all always doing our own thing, that like our schedules don't overlap like that easily. So we just like it's like very casual, like it's not like we have a set time for us to interact.
I see. That's interesting. Yeah, it's like just based on like your priorities, and also like I highly doubt that I interact with my parents more than you interact with your parents. It's really just when you're interacting. Like for me, it's like I'm not interacting with them at all until dinner time, and for you it's like it's spaced out all day, and there is no set dinner time. So I mean I guess there's no prioritized approach. It's just like a cultural thing, which is interesting because I feel like by now there would be some sort of standard that everyone just does, but it's so varied amongst like all of my friends. They have different systems for this.
I think this goes back to what we were saying about like the episode where we went over like brushing your teeth. It's like these small things in our day like that we just don't like, we kind of take for granted that everyone else does it the same way that we do. I remember like back in middle school, like in Spanish class, like we were learning about cultures in Spain, and how in Spain like they like here we like dinner is our like one big meal usually, but like in Spain it's kind of like lunch, right? And like they have a super long like lunch break, and they get to go home for lunch, and then they take like a siesta or something after, and then like dinner is kind of just like what we would think of as lunch, like they eat like a sandwich or something, which is like very light. I feel like that's just it's so interesting.
It is interesting, and from a fitness perspective, like they always say like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, blah blah blah, which is it's like such a twist upon what we know as culturally, because culturally it's like, oh, I'm gonna stuff my plate during dinner time, and breakfast, like I might eat a granola bar, or I might skip it entirely, versus like what's actually good for you is to like start your day with a lot of calories so that you can use those calories throughout the day, and then end dinner on like a pretty light note, because that's like conventionally known to be better for you. And it's just like, why do we do the reverse?
Really? Wait, okay. I think that breakfast thing is kind of interesting, because I feel like I disagree. Like I like would say that breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. Like even from like a fitness perspective, like really? I have been always like, because I think I've found this out recently. It's just like breakfast like just means break fast. So like breakfast, like it can occur at any time during the day. So like if you eat at like 12 p.m., like that is your break fast.
Right.
So
I
like
see.
like I don't know. I've never really believed that, maybe because I've never been the kind of person to eat breakfast. I don't think I've eaten breakfast in like years. But
Yeah.
like I don't know. Like I don't actually think breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I know that's something like they used to tell us in elementary school or something. I'd be super puzzled. I'm like, yeah, I don't eat breakfast.
Well, then what about your 12 p.m. meal? Would that be the most important meal of the day for you?
It's just like your like breaking fast is your important, because I think that when people say like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, they think like, oh, I need to eat like an egg sandwich or something at like 9 a.m. or like I need to eat like some I don't know, like some fruit and some cereal or like whatever it is you eat in the morning. I think people think of like breakfast foods and they think of like breakfast time. But I feel like that's not actually what makes the meal important. It's like you're breaking your fast, like, because you slept during the night, right? I think like that's what makes it important.
So would it be more accurate to say, like, would you agree with this statement that your first meal of the day is the most important meal?
Yeah, I think so.
I see.
But I guess, see, for me, like, I only eat once a day. So my first meal is at 5 p.m.
Yeah, right. I forgot
and that
about
is like
that.
a breakfast. I don't know. Like
I guess
that's
that is a
the
breakfast.
most important meal, and it's the only meal. So it can be it's the most important meal.
Well, like looking back in time before you started eating one meal a day, when you would eat 2-3 meals a day, would you still say that your first meal would be the most important?
Yeah, so before I started eating once a day, I think my first meal, I would say, was around like 1 p.m. I would say. So that, yeah, I would say it is the most important, like the first time that I eat.
Interesting. And like you mentioned like traditional breakfast foods versus traditional lunch foods.
Yeah.
Why do you think we have that distinction? Like when I eat cereal at dinner time, it's like odd. It's like, why are you eating that now? You should have eaten that in the morning. But why? Why is there time associated with certain food groups?
No, I've always found that so puzzling too, because like, I don't know, like traditional American breakfast foods are not healthy, like at all.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah,
No.
like why should you eat sugar cereal in the morning? Like that sounds so puzzling. Like why would you give your 5-year-old kid this like bowl of sugar and milk? Like that seems stupid to me. But like it's so accepted in American tradition. Like
Yeah.
how did that even happen? Like
Yeah. And that applies for not even just in the morning. I don't care when you're giving your 5-year-old kid cereal, but if the cereal is like something like cinnamon toast crunch, where it's just pure like flakes just filled with sugar, then it's like, why are you giving that to him or her any time in the day? It doesn't matter if it's breakfast. Like that's just bad for you, period. But it's just so accepted to have cereal for breakfast that no one really thinks twice about how actually dangerous that meal can be.
no, yeah, like I've thought about this too. It's like sometimes like I find that like when I would eat like kind of in the morning, like sometimes I would like, for example, microwave some of last night's like leftovers. I would microwave like maybe I had like pasta or whatever like last night, and I would just microwave it and I eat it in the morning if I'm hungry. But like I find that some people found that weird because they're like, oh, at breakfast you need to like drink orange juice and like eat like breakfast foods. I don't know. Also like the concept of like eating pancakes and things. Like I know people that eat pancakes and waffles like every day for breakfast.
Really?
And I'm like, that's like so weird to me. Like it's like it just sounds so very unhealthy and like very bad for you.
It's not only unhealthy, but also it's like this whole thing just brings up an interesting question, which is like, why does it matter? And why do we feel weird when we eat non-breakfast foods during breakfast? I don't know if you've felt this feeling, but like if I were to microwave my leftover pizza from last night's dinner and eat that during breakfast, it just makes me feel like gross and weird, versus if I ate that same leftover during dinner time, it would just feel like a normal meal to me.
No, I feel like that too. Like for example, like if you ate like what people call like breakfast for dinner, like if I cooked pancakes for dinner, like I think that would be odd.
Yeah. Well, actually, you don't eat pancakes during breakfast either, do you?
No, but I don't. But like, I guess like when I would eat pancakes, like I don't think I would like, like I don't eat pancakes on a daily basis. But like if I were to like cook pancakes, for example, like I can't just say like, oh, I'm craving pancakes, I'm craving cereal, and just like eat it like whenever during the day. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like those, I have like an obligation to those foods. Like I have to eat them at the socially accepted time. But I don't know, is there a nutritional basis for that? Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's very like like having so much carbs and sugar in the morning would be unhealthy. But I'm wondering like if that tradition happened because there was like a society or like some kind of like nutritionally accepted kind of thing at the time.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that like most of the things that we do simply because other people do them, usually they turn out to be like backed up by science, right? Like when people say like drink blank cups of water every day or something, that's like an accepted thing to do and it's good for you, it's backed up by science, like you should be drinking water, not necessarily like the X number of cups, but like you should be drinking water. But with the breakfast thing, like eat pancakes for breakfast, that's so accepted, but it really has no backing to it whatsoever. Like there's not a single study you can show me that would clearly convince me that current American breakfast foods are good for you in the morning. They're not. And I've seen firsthand what happened to me when I cut out eating things like Cinnamon Toast Crunch in the morning. Like I literally used to be classified as morbidly obese. Really? Or obese. Yeah, back in middle school. And it like I cut it out, and then literally within a couple of years, also there was like other factors because I was still growing and like children just tend to be pretty high up in this like BMI scale anyway. Yeah. But like I cut it out and then it's like boom, it's just it's just calories in versus calories out that determine how like fat you're gonna get. And if you're eating those high sugar filled foods in the morning, your calories in are already starting out at such a high number.
I think about this too, like I've always kind of been puzzled by the concept of pancakes because I don't really like, I've never like enjoyed pancakes. That makes sense. Like I don't know, I feel like it's the syrup that makes it taste good. Like, it's just that, like, the pancake itself is literally just, like, flour.
Like, yeah, it's just fluffy bread, basically.
I don't know, but I feel like it's such a staple in American food, you know? And, like, I don't know, like, I feel like how did we even come up with this thing? Like, to put like, flour on a pan and then, like, put syrup on it. Like,
isn't that the most like disgusting idea possible?
Yeah, like if I were to eat like that in the morning, I would feel like probably sick because I can't like process the sugar in the morning. But like every like American diner like serves that in the like as breakfast, like Denny's or IHOP or like whatever, and like even at McDonald's they have like the McFlurry or whatever it's called, and it's like a pancake sandwich kind of thing. Yeah, and it's like
it's just like, it's a weird cultural thing because also like most other cultures, like in fact pretty much every Asian culture, like Indian, Chinese, like, and then like other cultures as well. Like I haven't really looked into like African breakfast foods or anything, but I'm pretty confident that they're all like salty foods. Like because just based on the trends, like I've seen Indian breakfast foods, and I've seen a lot of my friends who are like Asian, their breakfast foods, it always happens to be like something that's salty, something that's not sweet. It might have carbs, but not too much. It's nothing to the extent of like syrup on flour. Like it's nowhere near that. And it's just like, if every other culture has such a healthy understanding of breakfast, not even healthy, just like moderate understanding of breakfast, then why is American culture like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Also, I think it brings up I think it's interesting that you bring up other cultures and how they view breakfast, because we were talking about like, why is it that we need to eat certain foods at certain times of the day? But like, I feel like even though different cultures, like, yeah, like I know Chinese culture, like we definitely don't eat like pancakes in the morning. Like it's savory food, like we said. But like, But they do have certain foods that are designated at certain times of the day. Does that in Indian culture? Like,
Yep. I think every culture has that, yeah.
Why do you feel like that is? Because I feel like that's just random to me. Like, why, like, I feel like what foods you eat at certain times of the day, like, it's, like, for me, it's quite arbitrary depending on, like, the day and, like, depending on what I'm doing. But, like, ingrained in our culture is kind of like, you know, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner foods, even if they're different foods depending on where we're from.
Yeah, and there's no pattern. There's no pattern that I can see amongst the types of food in Indian culture, or a pattern between Indian culture breakfast and American culture breakfast, or Indian culture lunch and American culture lunch. There's no pattern. It's literally all randomized. I have no idea why that is. It's so perplexing.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, we almost, like, as a society, we need to, like, categorize our food. Like, we can't just, like, say, like, you know, you can just eat when you're hungry. And we all, like, I feel like almost every culture has, like, has a tradition of eating, like, 3 meals a day.
Yeah, that's true.
I find that weird, too. Because, like, for someone that doesn't eat 3 meals a day, like, I don't feel the need to eat 3 meals a day. So, like, why is that so ingrained in our culture? Because, like, if I just eat when I'm hungry, and that only happens, like, once, like, you know, at night. Like, and I don't really get that hungry during the day, so I don't feel the need to eat. But, like, I remember, like, when I was younger, I would eat 3 meals a day because, like, you're supposed to do that, you know? Like, how... Yeah. Like, so why... Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, we have these, like, weird cultural things that's just, like... Why is it, like, common between all cultures? But it seems like there is very little kind of evidence or, like, science-based things, like, the reason why that is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we should have a whole other episode just about the similarities between cultures and religion, because I think in almost every single religion, they're all backed up by the same ideas. And it's just the extreme, like, actual traditions of those religions are different, but the basis of them are all the same. So we should definitely talk about that in another episode. But for now, let's wrap it up because we've reached 30 minutes. So thank you so much all for listening.